only love for my brother what I love for myself. Only Allah do I worship and ask Him for help. Every day 5 times must I always pray. I am proud to be a Muslim now. Everyone say La ilaha illallah Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace, blessings, and mercy be upon you. We start off by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, for all these blessings that we've been given. We're so blessed. You know, often we go through problems, grief, difficulties, and we let it occupy our entire day, our entire month, sometimes years. Wouldn't we love to just be relieved from the problem? Just like that. One dua and gone the problem. It's possible. Maybe not that quick, but it's possible with help, with support. So welcome back to our program, Knowledge to Action, where our intention is to make helping easy again. You know, it's such a common experience. We've all helped somebody. We've all been helped. So why is it so hard sometimes? So inshallah, one of our goals is to make helping easy. How do we do it? We do a process called scaffolding. You know, if you look at the picture of the Qubbat al-Sakhra, here inside you could see various bars that form their own structure. And the purpose of these interconnections is to provide support for the structure that needs development. So the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, Masjid al-Aqsa, this holy sacred place needs help. The Ummah needs help. People need help. It's up to you to decide whether you want to help them or not. Our job in this program is to provide those scaffolds, to provide the bits and pieces that form a structure to help something else. So, today we're going to talk about impression formations, how impressions are formed. We're also going to talk about the causes of behavior. Not necessarily the true causes, but how we view the causes of behavior. And then inshallah ta'ala, we're going to explore that people have rights on us. And everybody has a right to be treated fairly. And everybody has a right to not to be prejudiced. Not to be prejudged. So I look at you, you've got a big black beard, you're a big guy, all of a sudden I think, oh, I better watch out from him. Especially if you don't smile. But once you smile, oh, world changes now. He's a jolly old giant. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So how we form impressions of others is important. But what's more important is that our impressions are based on facts, on evidence, on authentic sources. So today's episode we've called, They Did What? Why? Let us begin. The first aspect a person bases their impressions on is usually a central trait. So you meet somebody for the first time, and you choose one central trait, one main aspect of them. So in previous sessions we talked about two individuals. Both had equal traits, except one was perceived to be warm and the other was perceived to be cold. And so the one that was perceived to be warm, people thought of as more positive. Why? Compared to the one that was perceived to be cold. Why do you think, Basil, why do you think a person who's viewed as being warm, people will connect to being more positive?
I think that person probably just has good interpersonal skills.
Good interpersonal skills.
They're a magnet in a way.
Okay, they're magnets. Something draws you towards them. Okay, all right. More importantly in this case here is that warmness provides unique information. It provides something unique about the individual. Like, it gives you more about that person. And it's also associated with many other factors. Warmness is associated with positive, nice, sunny day. Whereas cold is associated with other things, right? Or I'll give you another example. When you see a person for the first time, and you see the central trait as a leader, what do you assume? You assume he's intelligent. You assume he has this. You assume he has that. You assume educated. And then you see a person, and the central trait is, oh, he's a follower. You start to make other assumptions. Make sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Good. So that central trait, next time you see somebody, ask yourself, what is the central trait that I assume from this individual? A lot of times it happens to people who are religious, especially long beards, especially. Because right away the assumption is he must be educated in the deen, or it could be negative.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a false assumption, right?
Yeah.
There may be a positive correlation, but we'll get to that in a moment. Another thing, another factor that impacts our impressions of others is something called the primacy effect. That's information that you hear early on. Usually that sticks somewhere, and then you start drawing based on that. So basically, it's those first impressions that last. In Islam, we have a concept called husnul dhann, having positive opinions of others. And inshallah, we're going to focus on that concept throughout today's episode. You know, because you can tell somebody, have husnul dhann. Then what? Oh, have good opinions of people. Well, the person just lied to me to my face. He stole from me. He upset me. He hurt me. And you want me to have a good opinion? Do you want me to change reality? No. Husn al-dhann is blocking the schema, is blocking the bias from entering. It's not actual facts. Some people are criminals. You can't say, no, he's actually a religious scholar. You can't do that. But what do? We form impressions based on illegitimate evidence. It's not authentic. In our minds, it's made up. How, though? Something called schematas, or schemas, right? These are organized, interconnected networks of information. Based on what, though? Where do you collect your information from? Where do you get your information from?
From my, basically, my school.
Okay, from school, from educators,
Yeah.
from other people, right? In general, it's from past personal and social experiences.
Sure.
Because you need to judge current circumstances. We need schemas to fill in the blanks. Or else, can you imagine if I looked at this table and I had to see a circular shape with another base, with a pole, then I said, oh, this is a table. No, instead you look at it and immediately you draw that conclusion. This is how we function in the world. So these schemas are necessary. They're important. The problem is, what happens when they're faulty? When there's an error in the schema? Research shows that we usually pay more attention to evidence that confirms our schema. What it is, it's a script in our mind. It's just based there. It's stuck there somehow. So when you look at an individual and you form an impression of them, based on what? That's the question. If you have husn al-dhann, you'll base it on true facts. You'll wait to receive more information. Rather than as you walk, this guy's a thief, this guy's a this guy's a that, you make all these. And what happens in your mind? Forget about the others. Worry about yourself. Because it bothers you. It makes you distrust people. It makes you avoid them, especially if you have negative opinions of people. Research also shows that we tend to interpret new information also based on that schema. So you meet somebody new, they do something else, you base it on that as well. Something that you didn't expect, you base it on what you had in your mind. And usually we remember things that confirm the schema that we had. So now you meet somebody for the first time. Your opinion of them is that they, let's just say that they're rude. This is a rude person. Why do you say he's rude? Well, he didn't smile. I walked up to him, and he didn't even give me my due right. He didn't say Salaam Alaikum. He didn't say anything. Now you start building more and more. You started off with an impression of this individual. You started off with an impression of the person. You said in your mind, this is a rude person. Why? Well, all these religious figures, these big bearded men, they're all so mean and cruel. Why? Oh, because whatever experience they may have had. So now you see our beloved guest here. We're going to use you as an example. Imagine you see him not smiling, right? Even when he's smiling, he looks scary, but still. But those teeth, keep showing us those teeth. Now what happens is you do something called the illusory correlation. You take two things that are falsely connected and you bind them together. So you take individual with big beard, mean, you connect them together. They shouldn't be connected. Because logically, they don't connect. A beard doesn't impact your behavior. Right? Mm-hmm. It's a different concept altogether. Now, of course, the religious aspect of it is a totally different story. That's correlated with other things. But here, we're saying you have these two objects that shouldn't be connected, and we're connecting them based on the schema that we have. And so what ends up happening is we fall into something called the self-fulfilling prophecy. Which means what? Which means I now approach this big bearded man, and I have a negative opinion already. Do you think I'm going to be smiling? I'm going to come up and say, Assalamu alaikum. And his response is going to be what? He's going to parrot maybe my nonverbals, and he's going to look at me with the same way that I'm looking at him. And then I walk away and I say, see, I knew it. I knew it. He's rude. He didn't even smile at me. And so these schemas that we have in our mind, we owe it to others. It's their right upon us to give them the benefit of the doubt, to have husnul dhan, to have good opinions of people. So, when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about how we decide what was the cause of this specific behavior. Assalamu alaikum.
La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Why does Islam say, cover the, what is the purpose of our lives? When you go to the grave, the believer will be asked 3 questions. How many, destruction of marriages, of society, of family ties have come because of statements made on someone's tongue by what someone has said. What Sharia really is, think about it. But we want you to think about it. Think about life. Think about your purpose in life. Think about the creator of this earth we live in. Think about how you should worship this creator and who this creator is. That's our aim behind this show here on Huda TV. Let's focus on what Islam itself says as a legal Islamic religious system.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May God's peace, blessings, and mercy be upon you. Sources of the cause of behavior. Why do people do the things they do? Basil, think back to a time where you had a negative experience with somebody. Why did they do the thing they did?
I really think that it's probably based on stereotypes.
Okay.
Or bad experiences.
Hossam?
Alhamdulillah, I have good opinions about them. Yani. I don't have anything.
Of course. You're on TV. You have to be ideal. I've never had a bad problem with anybody.
No, this is my
Inshallah.
natural.
Good for you, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
No, absolutely. Well, you know, if we kept talking, we would probably break it down into 3 dimensions, 3 categories. Okay. First one, the cause of behavior is internal to the individual. Their mood, their personality, their tarbiyah, whatever it is, right? Or it's external to the person, their context, their situation. So let's use the example of approaching the big bearded man. And he doesn't smile back. I'll say, for example, I might say, his personality is that way. He was raised that way. It's internal to him. Rather than saying, he must have been having a bad day, something external. They call that dispositional or situational. Make sense? That's one category. So is it internal or external? A second category is it stable or not? Meaning, is it an enduring factor? Is it something that is persistent? He's always like that, compared to it's just a temporary state. He's been having a bad day. Third category, is it specific, meaning limited to a specific number of events? Meaning, I come to him, it's 5 p.m. or whatever time home time is in your country, and now I want his help. Well, why didn't you come to me earlier? I need to go home now. I have a family. I have my own personal responsibilities. Why is your emergency all of a sudden my priority? Let's be fair with one another. Or are we saying that no, this is a behavior in many situations. It's global. Meaning, whenever you see him, he doesn't want to help. So those are the 3 dimensions, causes of a specific behavior. Which ones should we assume? And which ones shouldn't we? I think it's pretty straightforward. People are not bad. Their situations perhaps have a big impact. Their behaviors, it's external. And also, people are not always like that. Even if you see them always like that, I'm sure there was a time they weren't. We'll be talking about that in a future episode when we identify exceptions to problems. And usually it's specific. Because even the rude guy, even the guy that's always rude, is nice somewhere. And we need to start identifying these strengths in people. And it starts with having husnul dhan, good opinions. But these biases prevent us from doing that. The fundamental attribution bias is what we were talking about. You meet the stranger and you automatically assume it's their personality. It's something dispositional. In fact, this is an extreme problem because when we look at victims of domestic violence, abuse, people who lose so much in their life because of some criminal, and unfortunately sometimes the criminals are in our own homes. They call it the just world bias, meaning that it's a just world, meaning if somebody suffered, they were a victim of something, it's their own fault. It's their own fault, meaning they brought it upon themselves. Now this is totally different from qada and qadar. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you see a woman being beat up and you say, oh, she must have did something to deserve it. And this is a huge problem in the West. Domestic violence is a major problem. There's a syndrome called battered women syndrome. It's a factor in cases where a woman has been beaten and abused for years. And her actions, her response, there was a case where the woman killed her husband. Gone free. Wasn't her fault. Truly. This is domestic terrorism. For years. Conditioned to live in fear. And so, unfortunately, sometimes we look at these victims and we say, oh, it must be their fault. That's not husn al-dhan. That's not justice. And so we need to prevent ourselves from these kind of biases, inshallah. And of course, when it comes to our own actions, we don't attribute it to personality. If we do something bad, what do we say? Oh, it's context. I've been having a bad day. But when we do something positive, we say, yeah, that's just who I am. Except in one case. People that have developed something called learned helplessness. They've been conditioned to feel like they're worthless. How many people do you meet on a daily basis who suffer from learned helplessness? It's going to be a topic that we're going to definitely focus on when we talk about self-esteem. Finally, usually we attribute our successes to internal and our failures to external. What's the problem with that? We're not going to change. If we always say, well, when I do something good, it's because of the person I am, but when I do something bad, it's because of everybody else, right? And this concept of deferred responsibility, meaning it's not my fault, it's his fault. No, I was here on time, he was here, whose fault is it? And so we're always looking for somebody to blame, a scapegoat, if you will. And part of the problem is because we don't have husn al-dhan, we have all these biases, and sometimes we're ungrateful. We don't appreciate the hard work that people do. And so sometimes what happens is people they go out trying to seek gratitude, or at least avoid blame. No, it's his fault. No, it's his fault. No, it's his fault. So what do? What should we do with this knowledge? How do we change these schemas, these scripts? I mean, think about it. These have been written in our minds for maybe the last 20, 30 years. We've had the schema that trust no one. People will abandon you. I'm a failure. And what I tell a lot of the youth that I work with, I say the biggest lie ever told, the biggest lie ever told is that you can't do it. And we tell ourselves that all the time. All the time. I can't do it. I can't do it. So the action. I have an acronym for you today. I act. I act is how we solve the problem of schemas. I act. I identify it. Identify it. Know the schema. What's going on here? But to do that, you have to pause and ask yourself the question, why do I think the way I do? Why, when I seen this person, I felt that way? And you need to reflect. You need to understand yourself a little more. A, analyze it. Keep asking why. Why, when I looked at this brother, I got a little intimidated? Well, because he's got a mean face. Well, why am I intimidated by mean faces? Well, because there might be a threat there. Okay, what type of threat? He'll stare me to death? Sometimes we find out it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You start from there. And then challenge it. Is it really true? Is my thought really true? Judge it. Put it on trial. Bring forth the evidence. And then the T, try again. Why do I say try again? Because usually it's not that easy. It's not easy. This is what we call cognitive behavior modification. You know when people say brainwashing? Okay, there's no such thing as brainwashing, but there is cognitive restructuring. This is changing the way you think. And if you can change the way you think, and you can have husn al-dhan of people, you will definitely be happier and definitely be in a better situation. So, today, I'd like to end off with a small reminder. People have rights on us. People have rights on us. And we have rights on others. Life is way too short for us to miss the opportunity of meeting somebody new. It's way too short for us to see somebody and have a negative opinion of them. So, inshallah, for our viewers, for our audience here today, we're going to try, I want to give you some homework. If you, the next time you see somebody that gives you an intense emotion, positive or negative, ask yourself why. And we'll see you next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I only love for my brother what I love for myself. Only Allah do I worship and ask Him for help. Every day 5 times must I always pray. I am proud to be a Muslim now. Everyone say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. La